Christine Persichetti. The cost of the migrant crisis is going up, and city leaders want to know why the new arrivals are costing the Big Apple billions. Meanwhile, one of the city's largest soup kitchens says the migrants are overwhelming the system, and keeping up with their mission is getting harder. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has more from Bedford-Stuyvesant.
New York City is currently housing and feeding more than 60,000 migrants. And still, organizations like St. John's Bread and Life have had to increase their hot meal distribution by 92%. And that's only since July. They come one by one, but at St. John's Bread and Life, that adds up. Sister Marie Sorensen, the Associate Executive Director, says you can feel the desperation of New York City's migrant crisis from both the newly arrived and the pantries trying to keep up.
It's affected St. John's and Bread and Life profoundly because we have quadrupled our number of people we serve.
Earlier this year, it cost the city $363 per migrant per day. In January, the Adams administration projected it would fall to $320, but instead it's up to $394. The city council wants to know why.
I'm immigrant myself, I'm a refugee myself. I'm very sympathetic with this situation.
Councilman Ari Kagan says this year each member was given $22,000 less to support soup kitchens and food pantries.
I expected more money for this program. The cost of groceries enormous for New Yorkers, and we're cutting on food pantries and soup kitchens because of the migrant crisis.
And they all want the same thing.
Executive Director Sister Caroline Tweedy says their mission is to feed those in need. But if the city is also feeding the newly arrived, why are they still hungry?
What we found was people were desperate.
Many migrants say the 2 meals they get from the city a day are not culturally sensitive. Sister Caroline says Bread and Life is supplementing for the city, but not getting enough support in return.
Local government are really looking to nonprofits like Bread and Life to make up that gap. You want to be that person that sees the face of God in the other. And isn't that what we're about as Christians? But I also have to think about the future as well.
With the holidays fast approaching, St. John's Bread and Life is prepared to give out more than 5,000 Thanksgiving meals, an 85% increase over last year. In Bedford-Stuyvesant, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Mayor Eric Adams says he's trying to avoid New York becoming a tent city, but he's running out of options.
We are out of room. And it's not if people will be sleeping on the streets, it's when. We are at full capacity.
New York City is sheltering more than 65,000 migrants and recently had to close some emergency shelters because of fire safety concerns. The crisis is set to get worse as U.S. Customs and Border Protection records the most encounters in more than 60 years. The agency saw more than 2.4 million people in the 2023 fiscal year. September alone broke a monthly record with more than 269,000 apprehensions. Developing tonight, Israel has agreed to delay its ground invasion of Gaza to allow the United States to protect troops across the Middle East. American officials persuaded Israel to hold off until air defense systems can be placed in the region. U.S. officials believe their forces will be targeted once Israel launches the ground invasion. The delay also takes into account hostage negotiations and plans to supply humanitarian support inside Gaza. Pope Francis has been praying for peace in the Holy Land and is asking all Catholics to do the same. He's marked October 27th as a day of prayer and fasting for the Middle East. Here with more on how the church is responding is the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg. Hi, John.
Hi, Christine.
So, John, how are dioceses taking part?
Yeah, so most dioceses around the country, many have encouraged their parishioners to tune in to the live stream of Pope Francis holding this prayer service, but others are also holding their own masses or prayer hours. So such as the Diocese of Brooklyn, they're holding a mass at the same time Pope Francis is speaking and a holy hour as well.
Speaking of Brooklyn, Brooklyn's Bishop Robert Brennan has spoken out against the violence in the Middle East since the Hamas attack on October 7th. Let's listen to what he had to say about that.
We have to be united in condemnation of what took place on the 7th of October, because that was above and beyond any kind of warfare or anything like that. That was just pure terrorism. So I know that the relations in the Middle East are very, very complicated, but it's very disheartening to see the anti-Semitic rhetoric and even some of the actions, violence around the world, rhetoric around here. People have a right to express opinions, to express political concerns, but when it gets into anti-Semitism, really racism at any level, that's degrading to the human person, and quite honestly, that's a sin against God.
How else is the Diocese of Brooklyn showing solidarity?
Well, one thing that exists in New York City, it's called the Commission of Religious Leaders. And what that is Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York convenes Bishop Brennan and other religious leaders in the city to talk about different issues so that when things arise, like different crises, they're able to respond adequately and support each other.
That's great they do that. What about over in Israel? Have any of the Catholic leaders there given an update on the conflict?
So the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Cardinal Pierre Battista Pizzaballa, he actually sent a letter to his diocese recently where he denounced the Hamas attack on Israel and also Israel, their counterattack. He doesn't want the loss of life. And one of the things he said specifically, he said, as Christians, prayer is perhaps the most important thing we can do at this time.
Absolutely. John Lavenberg, national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Christine.
And once again, on Friday, October 27th, there will be a holy hour at 11 o'clock at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James. Noon Mass will follow. It is open to the public, but if you can't make it, you can watch it live right here on Net TV. Be sure to pick up this week's Tablet newspaper to read more about the terror in the Holy Land. Learn about the airstrike that hit a Christian church in Gaza, killing at least 16 people. Then read the pleas for compassion from a New York rabbi. And the story of a Long Island man who flew to Israel to join the fight. Get your newspaper at your local parish this weekend, or you can get future editions sent straight to you by subscribing at thetablet.org. And finally tonight, those who uphold justice in the Diocese of Brooklyn look to God for guidance Tuesday night. The diocese held its annual Red Mass at the Immaculate Conception Center in Douglaston, Queens. Every year, judges and lawyers gather together in prayer to mark the beginning of the judicial year. Bishop Brennan celebrated the Mass, and he told those present that they are called to a holy and noble profession. That is this Currents News Update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.